Hi, and welcome to my channel if you're new here. This is going to be one of two fun little companion videos to accommodate my recent longer essay on Snow White. So what I thought would be a fun idea is to take these iconic Disney characters and adapt them as player characters for Dungeons & Dragons. That way I have an excuse to discuss something else fun with a Disney spin on it while showing you guys production art that didn't make it into the big video essay. I've also been really getting back into D&D lately and just wanted a reason to gab about it. Which, by the way, thank you for all of the supportive comments. They really do mean a lot to me as a small creator. You guys have been very kind, and each of these comments gives me a little more energy and reassures me that it's worth it to make these videos.
Oh, thank you so much.
Now, unlike a lot of D&D build media, this is not going to be a level 1 to 20 build. The reason being is the overwhelming majority of published D&D content is built for levels 1 to 10, which is what we're going to be using as our level range. Most of the focus will be on levels 1 to 6, however, since most campaigns tend to die at level 6, for one of these reasons usually. This makes for a much more practical and realistic build that you can replicate for yourself to feel more immediately impactful and thematic. And for this video, we will be adapting the OG Disney princess, Snow White. While we could draw our inspiration exclusively from the original film, I find this a bit limiting unless we were creating an NPC. So we're going to draw from a handful of adaptations she has appeared in to expand our ideas for what the OG Disney princess can be. I'm also not going to pretend the Lego Disney Princess movie wasn't a strong inspiration for this because Snow White is hilarious in it.
It could be anything or nothing. That's how it gets you. The fear.
The movie is also basically a Disney princess themed Dungeons & Dragons one-shot. Definitely not high art by any means, but still a fun watch. Especially if you're like my boyfriend and I, it can help break up binge watching Bluey together after we've both had a long day. Don't give us that look. It's not our fault the show is so cute and wholesome that it's like being fed antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds through the screen. Bluey also has some genuinely amazing episodes that use the medium of animation in a way that feels like high art, in case you guys ever want me to ramble about that show in the future. Alright, so based on this handful of references for inspiration, we can already see a few key things for our Snow White build. We'll start with this one.
And I have an axe!
Based on that line alone, Snow White is going to be a martial melee character in this build. It kinda makes sense given her time with the dwarves that later on they might have taught her how to defend herself with their weaponry. And just because she can hack you to bits with an axe, it doesn't make her any less sweet and feminine. Now this next trait should be pretty obvious. Snow White's affinity for the woodland creatures is such an omnipresent trait across adaptations that it'd just be wrong not to include it. There's also something deeply wrong with this build if she doesn't have proficiency in the animal handling skill too. And this final trait is arguable, but I think it makes sense for Snow White. While she brings her own strengths to the table, Snow White will always try to accomplish tasks with others if she can. Which means we'll need to ensure she has abilities that can benefit allies so they can all work together as a cohesive unit. Also, if you've ever played as the Evil Queen in Villainous, you know Snow White can turn into a raid boss with multiple dwarves on the board. Okay, now for our race and ability scores. If this surprises anyone, I'll be shocked, but it's pretty obvious that Snow White is a human. And unless your DM has a special hatred for it, we're going to choose Variant Human. This gives us a +1 to 2 different ability scores, an extra skill proficiency, and best of all, a free feat of our choice. For ability scores, we're going to use point buy unless your group rolls for stats, which will end up a bit higher than point buy on average. If your group is rolling stats, just reference the point buy array for a recommended stat priority. First off, we need a 15 in strength, then immediately using a Variant Human +1 to get a 16 in it. Because our weapon of choice is a battle axe, we need strength to maximize our chances of hitting with it and doing the best damage possible. Plus you get the fun of being a super girly character who undeniably is one of the strongest in the party. Wisdom is going to be a 13 before receiving the other +1 from being a Variant Human to become a 14. While she does fail one insight check in the movie, Snow White shows herself to be modestly intuitive and also has great emotional intelligence. Though there is this one moment in the Lego Disney movie where she may have gotten an iffy roll too.
That girl is 7 gems short of a diamond mine.
Even though she did iconically fail that one saving throw in the movie, Constitution is going to be a 13 as well. And with our free feat, we're taking Resilient, despite the irony, to boost our Constitution to a 14. It also grants proficiency in Constitution saving throws, which will be crucial for this build, and a great save to be proficient in anyway. Next we need a 13 in Dexterity for multi-classing later on in this build, which means we'll have to live with the odd numbers staring at us. It's going to seem weird that Snow White or any Disney princess would only have a charisma of 10, but this is because our build is already so mad. Mad meaning multiple ability score dependent, which is a term for a class or build that needs 2 to 3 stats to be at least above average in order to function. Our skill proficiencies can make up for the innate lack of charisma though. We'll then be dumping Snow White's intelligence to an 8, though I do want to mention this doesn't make her an idiot. Despite the memes exaggerating it, an 8 in intelligence is the equivalent of graduating high school with unremarkable grades and just not pursuing college. Now for our free skill proficiency, we'll be grabbing performance so Snow White can sing and dance, while any language options are completely up to you for flavor outside of Dwarvish. For Snow White's background, she is a noble, seeing as she was born a princess, which gives history and persuasion proficiency along with this feature. Right from the get-go, we're going to make Snow White a ranger at level 1 to get our woodland defender theme going. We'll also be using the optional features Deft Explorer, Favorite Foe, and Primal Awareness to replace Ranger's vanilla features, unless your DM has a weird hatred of them. Seriously, it's Ranger, the most memed class in 5e for being weak. With Deft Explorer, Snow White gains expertise in one skill, and we're going to apply that to animal handling, doubling her proficiency bonus on any checks made with that skill. Speaking of skills, we will obviously be taking animal handling, along with nature and perception to solidify Snow White as a woodland defender. We also gain Favored Foe, which you must concentrate on to deal an extra d4 of damage when you hit an enemy for the first time each round. And this is why we want a proficiency in Constitution saving throws, because if Snow White gets hit, she has to make a concentration check or else lose Favored Foe on her target. We also want this feature because, if I'm being honest, favorite enemy is just awkward to utilize for the average player. For starting equipment, you'll be taking a scale mail, a longbow with a quiver of 20 arrows, and your choice between the 2 packs offered. I doubt they'll mind, but see if your DM is cool with you having a battle axe as starting gear, since it's a basic weapon any adventurer might have. At second level, we get a fighting style, and of the available options, archery is our best choice to ensure Snow White is effective at both melee and ranged combat. We also get to learn 2 first level ranger spells of our choice, which is why we took a 14 in wisdom earlier. Even though we already have Favored Foe, we'll pick up Hunter's Mark because it deals 1d6 damage every time you attack. Having both functionally doubles Snow White's uses of her main damage booster, and I recommend Ensnaring Strike as another alternative that also provides crowd control. Picking up our 3rd level will unlock our subclass, which is going to be Swarmkeeper. This grants the Gathered Swarm feature, which is a swarm of nature spirits that take on one of 4 forms, which gives us our menagerie of woodland helpers. This is a strong feature that's very on brand and assists Snow White in one of 3 ways after landing an attack. First, the swarm can reenact Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds by biting and dealing 1d6 piercing damage to your target. You can also force the target to succeed on a strength saving throw equal to your spell save DC, or else they get pushed up to 15 feet in any horizontal direction. Or you can have the swarm move you 5 feet in any direction horizontally. Needless to say, this is the beginning of your quest to become a woodland terror. Your magic also improves at this level, granting the Mage Hand cantrip, which takes the form of your little birdies, which makes it ideal for doing that house cleaning scene. You also get the Fairy Fire spell, where you throw glow-in-the-dark craft glitter on every enemy within a 20-foot cube and force them all to make dexterity saves. Any creature that fails this save gets bedazzled, so they can't benefit from being invisible, and any of your friends who attack a bedazzled enemy get advantage on the attack roll, which just made every rogue player watching this cry with joy. You also get to pick up another spell known outside of those granted by your class features. I'd personally recommend Absorb Elements so you can handle incoming elemental damage and then add 1d6 of that damage type on your next melee attack for payback. You also get Speak with Animals from your Primal Awareness feature to improve and maintain your OG Disney Princess brand. At 4th level, you want to increase your strength by 2 with the ability score increase for a greater likelihood to land melee attacks and deal more damage. That's really all you get from this level. If you've acquired the cash, feel free to try and switch out your scale mail for a breastplate so you no longer have disadvantage on stealth checks. Now 5th level is a lot of fun since Snow White gets the extra attack feature to greatly increase her damage output, especially with Hunter's Mark. And outside of hacking things to bits, this is also accompanied by getting access to our 2nd level ranger spells for increased utility. From Primal Awareness, Snow White gets Beast Sense, which lets you see and hear through the eyes and ears of the beast you touch when casting this spell. The Swarmkeeper subclass gives her a strong form of crowd control and web, in case you ever want to feel like Spider-Man in a dress. When it comes to which spell to add from your list, here's my recommendations. 8 is an amazing buff that lasts 8 hours without concentration and improves your party's survivability. It's also the easiest option to use on this list and almost always worth the spell slot. Now unless you've already received magic weapons from the adventure, the spell Magic Weapon will be your top priority. This is because you're now at a level where you will start to encounter enemies that are resistant to non-magical weapons, which will heavily dampen your ability to damage them. So by taking the spell Magic Weapon, you go from this to this.
Oh, no.
Submit!
Enhance ability is an excellent buff if you want or need to act like a rogue for your party when it comes to making skill checks. It can also give an ally 2d6 temporary hit points as a combat option, but the advantage on skill checks is where the money is at. And finally, Pass Without Trace gives your party a huge bonus to stealth just so you can make the rogue feel inadequate. If you really want more than one of these spells, you can always exchange Ensnaring Strike or Absorb Elements for one of them if either spell has been underwhelming so far. Making our way to 6th level, we're actually going to take a dip into becoming either a Life or Nature Cleric. The reason for choosing one of these two is because Snow White gains Heavy Armor proficiency, which will be great for her armor class as a Strength-based ranger. Taking the Life domain is ideal if you really want to swap out one of these two spells for a beefed up Goodberry, which is amazing for out of combat healing. Meanwhile, the Nature domain lets you ritual cast Speak with Animals, meaning it functionally has unlimited uses, grants a Druid cantrip, and gives you proficiency in survival. For Cleric cantrips, I highly recommend Guidance, Light, and Word of Radiance. Guidance will enable you to shout, "I cast Guidance!" as you give anyone in your party an extra d4 to their next skill check. Light is basically a handheld flashlight, while Word of Radiance lets you try to hit all enemies next to you for radiant damage. Alternatively, you can take Thaumaturgy instead of Word of Radiance in case you just want to mess with people by causing minor supernatural wonders. With only one level in Cleric and a +2 modifier in Wisdom, Snow White can only prepare 3 Cleric spells at a time, but that's plenty for us. If you didn't choose the Life domain, I highly recommend taking Bless unless someone else already provides it in combat. Regardless of domain, Snow White should definitely take Healing Word and Sanctuary as both are incredibly clutch spells for when things go pear-shaped. After taking this level in Cleric, you should definitely go shopping ASAP to get the best heavy armor you can find to boost your armor class. And that's our level 1 to 6 build for the OG Disney Princess. But what are the pros and cons of this build? Well, to start, Snow White can reliably hit enemies in both melee and ranged combat. Her 6 to 7 skill proficiencies and the Guidance cantrip also give Snow White a roguish feel for out-of-combat problem solving. Snow White also has solid bonus damage sources so she won't lag behind in combat. These include Favored Foe, Hunter's Mark, Gathered Swarm, and Magic Weapon if she took it. She also has a huge amount of magical utility from her spell choices, especially after taking a level 1 dip in Cleric. Okay, and now for the downsides of this build. First off, Snow White is heavily reliant on maintaining her concentration. Tricks like Favored Foe and Hunter's Mark rely on this, and since Snow White is a melee character, she is far more likely to get hit in combat. This means she'll be more prone to having to make concentration checks so she doesn't lose the active effect. Her second weakness is that any options that rely on her spell save DC are going to become less effective from level 5 onwards. This is because all of these effects scale off of her Wisdom ability score, which is something we haven't been increasing at all in this build. And finally, even with a longbow, this build really wants to be in melee combat for the most part, which can make distant foes a bit annoying for Snow White. Now that we've established what to expect with this build for your average campaign lifespan, we can now finally talk about the choices for if your campaign goes beyond this point. When it comes to choices for levels 7 through 10, which is what most published campaigns treat as max level, here's my recommendations. First, we're getting that 6th level in Ranger, so Favored Foe's damage increases from a d4 to a d6, which puts it more on par with Hunter's Mark. Snow White's movement speed will also go up to 35 feet at this level, plus she gains a climbing and swimming speed, which are excellent for traversal and exploration. Your mobility options only get better at 7th level in Ranger with the Writhing Tide feature. This makes your bird swarm carry you in order to fly at a blazing speed of 10 feet per round. Well, at least you can hover. I'm sure someone will come up with a silly combat application for this, but for the most part, Snow White is going to be adding this to her wide pool of traversal options. You can also pick up another ranger spell at this level, and no, my recommendations have not changed in case you are wondering. At 8th level, you can finally cap out Snow White's strength to 20 and maximize your melee combat potential. Your suite of traversal options also expands with Land Stride, which makes it so non-magical plants in difficult terrain don't cost you extra movement as you go through them. Then finally at 9th level, Snow White gets her 3rd level ranger spells, which are a bit underwhelming compared to other half-casters. At least Revivify is available, so grab that, it will never be useless. You also get 2 freebie 3rd level spells in Speak with Plants from Primal Awareness, which is super situational, and Gaseous Swarm from being a Swarm Keeper. which lets you be like the sisters from Resident Evil Village. And that's the level 1 to 10 build. Overall, this should be a relatively easy character to pick up and play, assuming you start between levels 1 and 3. Until level 6, your game plan is just to apply a favored foe or hunter's mark onto the target, then hack away at them until they're little bits. The majority of your spells either help you do this, improve your party's survivability, or assist with skill checks. Hopefully all this information was helpful to any of you watching who are D&D newbies, or if you're a D&D veteran who's never tried out Ranger before, hopefully this video helped inform you on one way to play the class. Either way, this Snow White build shows that you can be a super girly character and still potentially have the highest strength in the party. By all means, be the pretty princess powerhouse you've dreamed of being. And if you want to play as a race besides human, just use the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything rule where you can take a +1 in 3 different ability scores. If you do this though, I highly recommend that you take your first level in fighter so you can get that sweet proficiency in constitution saving throws. You'd be forsaking the cleric level later on, but you'll have heavy armor proficiency from the get-go and could take a second level of fighter later on instead of a 9th level in ranger so you can get action surge. If you're still listening to me ramble at this point, please leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Be sure to comment if it helped you learn anything, or if there's other Disney characters you want me to D&Dify. And if you really like this video, please be sure to subscribe and help my channel grow. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this video insightful.